Hey guys, what's up? My name is Anthony, and welcome to another edition of VNA Sports Talk. And today, I'm going to have a Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow conversation. I already discussed it, but I want to re-record the intro because I feel like I didn't do due diligence of this. Daniel Jones is ranked 11th on PFF for quarterbacks. Do you guys know that? Are we just not going to comment about that? Yes, PFF, the ones that hated Daniel Jones last year, better than Big Ben Roethlisberger, better than Lamar Jackson so far this year. He's a better passer than Lamar Jackson has been, and we saw his yards per scramble are just as good. And he's lost his team some games, but overall, the Ravens have a much more talented roster. And we can do comparisons to each and every quarterback. We'll do that with Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. We'll have that conversation in just about a minute, I think. But overall, Daniel Jones has played fairly solid. You got to take a look at the whole picture. He's had some games where he threw the game away. Obviously, the Buccaneers. That game is just. Can a quarterback have a bad game? Are we allowed to do that? Tom Brady had a bad game. Has had bad games, and he's been in this league for a while. Now, you can say it's because of his age, whatever, but it's not really. Quarterbacks sometimes just don't show up. They have duds. Russell Wilson has duds. I don't know how Russell Wilson's ranked so highly on this because he's had a couple bad games. That's because he's trying to do too much. But overall, Daniel Jones is not in the conversation, I think, with Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins just yet, but he has more athleticism than them. As far as accuracy, he needs to improve that a little bit. But as far as bonehead mistakes, Kirk Cousins still make bonehead mistakes. So overall, Daniel Jones is right there. All of a sudden, you take a look at the big picture, and he's not quite as good as Kyler Murray just yet as far as understanding the offense and stuff. But overall, you got to be proud for what Daniel Jones has been so far. And 11th on PFF. What are they doing? I think it's because of the lack of turnover where he plays, and I think they really focus on that. And his downfield accuracy has gotten better over the past couple of weeks. And even in the beginning of the season, he was rated fairly highly, even though he didn't quite have those downfield shots. But this is the NFL. Some quarterbacks have all the stats and stuff, and Daniel Jones hasn't had the bunch of stats. Again, 8 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 2,100 yards. He hasn't had the stats, but. And he hasn't been winning either. I don't understand this ranking. I'd probably have Daniel Jones closer to 15, 16. But on to the Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow conversation I had a little bit earlier. Today, I want to discuss Daniel Jones, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. What's the difference between these three guys? What do they do that's great? What do they need to work on? And all the things like that. So, as a Giants fan, I wanted Justin Herbert. I really did. He was my favorite coming out of the draft. I wish he would have came out. I was so depressed. Well, so sad. I shouldn't use the word depressed, but I was so sad when he didn't come out in the draft in 2019 because I really wanted him. That's why I wanted a Josh Allen. I'm just wait for Justin Herbert next year. And then this year, he started off fairly well. He has 19 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. We all know his stats pretty much. This is the NFL nowadays. We all know all these guys' stats, but overall, he struggled throwing the ball downfield, I think. The first couple of games, it feels like it was a little anomalistic because I'm oh, yeah, he was throwing the ball. He was targeting guys downfield, and it's he was successful as far as that goes. But I still think that you see his struggles. His mechanics aren't that great. His screen game, sometimes he's just off throwing. He makes some boneheaded decisions sometimes, but he's only in his first couple of games, and I don't really blame him for not really succeeding. He's put in a pretty bad spot. He's okay, Justin Herbert, you're starting against the Chiefs. Punctured lung, Tyrod Taylor. Go. Let's see how you do. But, yeah, so as far as Joe Burrow, some of my brief opinions about him, this dude can ball. People are but can he throw to the outside? It doesn't matter. The dude is really good in the pocket. I've seen him play in person twice. Well, no, once. I saw him play in 2018. I remember he was the most hyped guy, and people were where did Joe Burrow come from? No, he was a really hyped player in the SEC. He was really hyped. And I was one of those haters, what is Joe Burrow good at? He went through the first 5-6 games in 2018 without an interception. The dude's smart. He can process. He's 25. He's actually older than Daniel Jones. I think Justin Herbert is as well. I'm not too sure about that age. I think they're about the same age, him and Justin Herbert. But Joe Burrow has been playing for a while. Joe Burrow, these guys aren't just Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is actually younger than Daniel Jones. These guys are, all around the same age. It's not like Sam Darnold has a wealth of experience more. But Joe Burrow came in the league. He lit it up right away. But the offensive line just stinks. And a lot of miscues and a lot of just bad play from the Bengals. I feel kind of bad for Joe Burrow. If you compare the stats, I have them up right now. Overall, Joe Burrow 2-6-1, Justin Herbert 1-7, 65% for Joe Burrow, almost 67 for Justin Herbert. So it's like, oh, he's accurate. But really, you have really good wide receivers. Rating, 90 for Joe Burrow, 102 for Justin Herbert. But both have the same amount of interceptions, 5 and 6. But you see Justin Herbert's only taken 16 sacks, while Joe Burrow has taken 32. He's taken a punishment. Justin Herbert has a yards per attempt above average. Joe Burrow has just one a little bit below average. And then rushing, Justin Herbert has a decent amount of wheels from what I was surprised at. He's almost has 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. And so overall, fairly solid, not great, but these guys are, they're holding their own. Now, with the whole conversation I want to have about, we talked about this. What are the teams that need quarterbacks right now? The Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. Let's name the teams, right? When I come out with my video, I said Minnesota, they're out now. I said the Patriots, they're out now. They're winning games. Okay, they have good coaching. The Corona season, they have advantage in some of those games. All right, let's talk about it. The Jets, who do they draft? Sam Darnold. Okay, you'll see if you notice a little bit of trend. Washington, who do they draft? Dwayne Haskins. All right. What about Denver? Who do they draft? Drew Lock. You see a little bit of a trend here? Those are the 3 teams that people are like, oh yeah, they'll draft the quarterback. Overall, I think that Joe Burrow has a deep understanding for the game. Daniel Jones has good mechanics. Justin Herbert needs to work on them. Joe Burrow, overall, just wealth and knowledge of the game. And he's going to suck at some games because of the talent around his roster. Like sometimes, when you're playing in college, usually your roster is just as talented, or at least not more talented than the other team. And Daniel Jones didn't have that. Justin Herbert had that 90% of the time. Daniel Jones did not. Sometimes he played against a shitty team, but Daniel Jones is used to not being, not having the players just around him. Joe Burrow is not, and that's why he's losing a lot of games. But he's like, oh, I'm a winner. I haven't had a losing season in my life. So there's a little bit of a Joe Burrow discussion. Like, you take a look at the defenses we played. Who was the easiest defense we played against? Washington? And Washington has Chase Young. They have one of the best secondaries in the league. And we play against Cincinnati next. And let me tell you, they're pretty porous defense. So I'm expecting a 3-touchdown, 4-touchdown game from Daniel Jones. That's just my expectations right now. Joe Burrow against the Giants, we have a pretty good defense. We'll see. The defense that he's playing up against, when he's played tough defenses, he struggled. But he had an impressive game against the Tennessee Titans. He's had some impressive moments here and there. But overall, when Joe Burrow's played tough defenses, he struggled. And there's a reason why. Because, his team sucked. He needs to stick to his guns. And he hasn't really been put in a place to succeed with the Cincinnati Bengals. His coach is, I can't really comment too much about it because his coach probably knows 100 times more about football than I do. But, yeah, when he plays tough teams, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. Those teams, Baltimore, Indianapolis, and those quarterbacks, people in the beginning of the season, they were getting it done. But eventually, getting it done, it's here and there. It's a 50-50 shot. Yeah, and Daniel Jones, at the beginning of the season, he wasn't getting it done because, he made 5 miraculous plays to get to that position. And then all of a sudden, he made 1 bad play. Just like, oh, the game's over. But it's called experience. These players are getting experience. I'd honestly, if I had to rank them between Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, I didn't really discuss about Tua because there's still a lot. He has a lot of that polish that Joe Burrow has. Doesn't really have the arm strength that Joe Burrow does. But he's very smart up on top. But he just doesn't have the athleticism. And that's crazy to think. Like, we thought Tua was like the athletic guy, But he's one of those guys that he's like a Baker Mayfield combined with a Joe Burrow. But, so they're just so close right now that it's really hard to tell. I wouldn't have minded if the Giants drafted Justin Herbert. Should we have drafted him? Should we have waited? Yeah, and I forgot about this little nugget. Remember when we interviewed Justin Herbert in the draft and then people were like, are we going to take Justin Herbert? That would have been quite interesting. I think as far as the fit in this offense, it would have been a little bit questionable, but man, I remember that. I don't really have that much more to comment about it. But let's get on with the rest of the video. If you picture, we would have Josh Allen and Dexter Lawrence and then Justin Herbert. And then some other higher picks because we would have sucked last year as well. But that's pretty much my thoughts about the whole situation. These quarterbacks are good. And it's going to be interesting to see going down the stretch and going down for the next couple of years how these quarterbacks end up being. I think Daniel Jones, I believe in Daniel Jones. I'm a Giants fan, so I'm obviously going to have most confidence about Daniel Jones. And if you're a Chargers fan, you should have confidence about Justin Herbert. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.